tight. They were the real tight group guys.
Were they?
They were had a lot of respect for each other. They played at 100% all the time. And of the four, remember Allen came in from Notre Dame. He was kind of like the young buck with all the energy, and well, Jim too. But I'm just saying, but that Purple People Eaters, man, just to sit back and watch them. I watched them on TV from the time I was 11. That's the crazy thing, you know. I was 11 years old when he came in the league.
You good? All right. First off, just about Jim Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody says that if you wanted to pick one person that represented the franchise, he would be that person.
I agree with that 100%. There hasn't been any person that we've had a lot of great players, obviously, and a lot of great leaders, but Jim Marshall is the face of the Minnesota Vikings when it comes to who is a Viking. You know, Gary Larson looked like a Viking, but Jim Marshall was everything you would think of to be a Viking. If you would never want to go anywhere without him. If you had to go someplace and to survive, you want Jim Marshall by your side because you know you would make it out. I remember my first agent was a gentleman by the name of, what's his name? Played lineman for John Wooten. He played lineman for the Cleveland Browns. And he blocked for Jim Brown. Most of people don't know that, you know, Jim Marshall played on the Cleveland Browns with Jim Brown. And John Wooten told me, he says, you're going to go to Minnesota, you're going to meet a guy unlike anybody else you've ever met in your life. And I said, well, who? He says, Jim Marshall. Don't you even try to keep up with him because you can't. He's something different in a lot of ways. He's smart, you know, he's committed. I mean, Jim Marshall, when I first got here, you know, I came up from my first training camp, and they said, well, we have to go to Jim Marshall's, or we have to go through this little, he had this path that he ran by his house that, you know, to see if you could keep up with him, and if you kept up with him, you knew you were in shape. Well, I'm being 20 couple years old, you know, he's like 30, whatever it was at the time, because I was 11 when he first got into the league. 11 years old, I was watching. And I got there and I'm like, there's no way possible this guy's gonna outrun me. You know, and we took off, right? Me, Jim Lash, and I think Brent McClanahan was with us, you know, rookies.
Right.
And we took off, and at the beginning, we were there, but we noticed that, we looked at each other and we noticed he was going further and further ahead of us. And we couldn't catch him. And he got back to the finish, and he was sitting down while we were still finishing the run. But he had such a commitment and such a love for the game. He was a great leader, but a great, great person. He'd give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. He was the kind of guy, I mean, it'd be hard not to follow, you know. And I don't think the franchise has ever had anybody like that since. We've had a lot of good people, a lot of great players. That's understandable. But there's only been one Jim Marshall in this town, and that's a fact.
So you talk about personifying a Viking,
right,
and being a Viking. What was the attributes about him? Was it his toughness?
Right.
Was it his stoicness? Was it his commitment? What was it?
Everything that you said is how you define Jim Marshall. He was tough. He was stoic. He was smart. You know, if you had to go to battle, I mean, a Viking, you know, you think of a Viking, you think of the Viking warship, you think of the Vikings, you know, these big guys with these, you know, but he would have been a big black guy with a white beard, you know what I mean, that was leading the way. And you know you could follow him because at the end, you knew he would win. I mean, this is the kind of guy that he was. He was unique. Now, you know, of course, like I said before, I mean, he was much older than me because when I was watching him, like I said, when I was, like, I don't want to keep saying it, 11 years old, he was in the league. He played with the Vikings. I was like junior high school when they were in the Super Bowl. And then when I come to Minnesota and for my first practice from the college all-star game, and I walk on the practice field, I'm nervous anyway. But then I'm walking out and then I'm having to line up for some drills and you got the purple people eaters up there. I mean, the greatest defensive line that was ever assembled. The greatest bunch of guys ever assembled. And, you know, I'm like, in awe of these guys, I was like, I didn't even want to run by them. I would just say, excuse me. You know what I mean? I just like, but that's the kind of aura they had. And Jim was the guy that created it. He was the guy that even the linemen, you know, it was Jim, and Jim was the leader. But he was the leader of the entire team. I mean, after the games, you know, you didn't go out to a bar or anything like that. You went to Jim's house, and you celebrated and did that thing.
Really?
Yeah. I think the Vikings back then, I think Jim Finks was giving them money to have the parties to keep everybody together, so everybody could keep an eye on each other. I really believe that, and it was a great special privilege to be a teammate with Jim Marshall. That's all I can say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to have legendary people like that in your lives that you can call a friend.
Right. You know, and I know towards these last few years he had some health issues, and he was not around a lot. You know, a very proud guy for sure, and you know, so you were limited in whether you could visit or not. But the good thing is, I can only say this: when you talk to Jim Marshall, he lived a great life, and he lived it the way he wanted to live it. He lived it with class. He lived it. He was an exciting guy. He was a daring guy. He was he was different, man. He was unique, and I don't know if they've ever made another one like him. I really don't.
Well, how could anybody play 280 games consecutively?
Football games now. I'm not talking about baseball.
He's not a punter.
No, he's not a. You know,
he's right.
This man was in the middle of everything, and he was the greatest leader. And you know, I can remember being in the locker room, and he's coming by and giving everybody the little knuckles and, "Are you ready to go?" You know, that type of thing. Every game, and he come give you that, and you know, you look in his eyes and you see he was focused. And there was a place that was unique that you could get to as far as focusing on your assignments and your game. And if you didn't know how to do it when you got here, you learned it, and he took you to a whole different level. And that I can't even really explain it. It's just a level of concentration and a level whereas you can do things, if you're in that space, mental space, that you can do things that you just don't. Trust me, I did some things I never even thought. I looked at the film, I'm like, how did I do that? But you know, when you're that focused and you're in that game mode, you know, you're capable of anything if you are, you know, dialed into it. And Jim was a guy that, you know, you could look and see he's dialed in, and you can go talk to him how to dial in. He just like, get yourself mentally ready. Mentally, he was probably the toughest guy I ever met, too. I mean, he was tough. I mean, he was probably the best at every aspect of life as far as I'm concerned. I think most people would say the same thing that knew him. Just, you know, the thing is, for me anyway, you know, like I said, I got here, you know, him and the guys were already here. They had established the foundation of who the Vikings were. I was just privileged enough to bring my skill set in, and we went to do some great things together. And I had it's just to be able to do it with those guys, not just the Purple People, but the entire team. That Bud assembled, the Vikings assembled, Jim Finks assembled. He not only assembled some really, really great players, but also great people. And that's the part that separated, I think, the Vikings from most franchises. We had a lot of really good people and a lot of respect in the locker room.
So you had this streak. Was it something that was talked about? Was there ever a Sunday where, boy, I don't think Jim's going to play today?
No. I remember one game, I think I remember he was in the hospital. You know, the night they say, man, they took Jim to the hospital. I'm like, what? Yeah, well, 12 o'clock, guess who was running on the field? They went and took the ambulance. I think that's the story. They took the ambulance, went and got him out of the hospital, brought him back to the stadium. He suited up. He was good to go. I'm telling you, this guy was unique in every way. And I'm sure there might be someone close to who he is or was. And I don't know if there's any more like him that I've ever met anyway.
Was he someone that spoke to the team, or did he just lead by example? You said he would go around the locker room
Right.
and, make sure you're ready to go and kind of
Right.
have contact with
Yeah,
you.
he'd have contact. But I don't remember him giving any speeches or anything like that other than, look, it's time to go or something like that. But all you had to do is look at his eyes and Jim Carl. I mean, we had a very, very, I was lucky. I got here, we had a very, very mature, well put together team as far as personalities, what it took to win. When we went on road trips, everybody was dressed to the nines, the way it was supposed to be, all totally professional, you see. And that was what I got, those guys were professional in how they did their job, when we were on the way to do it, when we got there to do it, but when that whistle blew, it was a whole different personalities then. It was some there was no quit in anybody.
How did that foursome become such a force together? Was it the personalities? Was it the skills? Because we all see them, fans look at them as one.
Right.
Right? You say one name and the other three names just roll off the tongue.
I just think the respect they had for each other, the hard work they put in practice. By the way, and the coach Jack Patera that they had, I think he was a catalyst because he really, I'm like, he's talking to those guys like that. I mean, he really pushed them to be who they were, but they accepted that. And Jack Patera was one heck of a coach, a defensive line coach we had when we were, and his personality was kind of like who they were too. I mean, they were some tough guys, I mean, I practice against them every day. So when I played against our opponents, I mean, hey man, I practice against those guys all the time. You nothing. I'm practicing against the Purple People Eaters. And that's what I think separated those guys. They had a close bond, and respected each other to the utmost. And even the guys that they brought in as their backups, had to take on that persona.
Did you ever get hit by him in practice? Is there ever any encounters where he accidentally took a little too much, or was
No,
you were
Jim
skipping
was
by him a little too much, and he was like, okay, I gotta slow this guy down, at least try to.
No, Jim was pretty cool dude too. He was just like, I don't know, a big brother kind of like guy that would look after everybody. Everybody looked up to him, and you had a very bright, smart guy too. So you could talk to him about. He knew pretty much about everything. And yeah, he was. You know what? Let's just put it this way: there has never been and never will be another Jim Marshall. Period. That's all I can say. He was the creme of the creme. You know, just the greatest leader I've ever been around or I've ever seen. A leader of men. I mean, you can take him and you know that when you can follow him anywhere and know that you'll come out and you'll come out safe. And that if you had to go into a battle with him, you know, if he's coming out, you're coming out with him. He left no man behind. That's the kind of guy he was. He, in my opinion, you know, I mean, like I said, he was older. We didn't what you call, you know, he you know, but I'm just saying the impact he had on all of us. I'm talking about him now, and I guarantee everybody he's ever touched that came through this organization would say the same thing. I don't think there would be one that wouldn't say Jim Marshall, you know, they call him Cap, and he's the only Cap that had that type of strength and grit and all the things that you need to be a great leader. Yeah, in fact, when they say leader, you can just put his name up there because that's what he was.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for having me. And, you know, Jim's resting. Rest in peace, my friend.